International trade refers to the exchange of goods and services from one country to another. In other words, it is import and exports. Exchange market is an international over-the-counter (OTC) marketplace that sets the exchange rates for different currencies.
Difference between domestic and international trade. From definition, domestic involve those economic transactions that take place within the geographical boundary of a country. For international, involve those economic transactions that take place outside the geographical boundaries of a country. For buyer and seller, in domestic, belong the same country in domestic business. For international, belong the different country in international business. For currency, in domestic, deal with the same currency since both of the buyer and seller are from the same country. For international, deal with different currencies since both of them are not from the same country. Perbezaan seterusnya adalah dari aspek customer. Untuk domestic, there is greater homogeneity in terms of nature of business. For international, greater of heterogeneity in terms of the nature of customer of international business. For the next is geographical boundaries. There are limit in domestic. For domestic, limit domestic business, and for international is unlimited international business. Next is business research. For domestic, less complex and relatively cheaper for domestic business compared to international organization. For international, more complex and relatively expensive for international business compared to domestic. Next is capital. For domestic, lower for companies that are involved in domestic business, and for international, higher for companies that are involved in international business. Next is factor of production. For domestic, greater mobility of factor of production compared to international business. For international business is lesser mobility of production compared to domestic business. Next is restrictions. For domestic, lesser restriction than international business, and for international business is greater restriction than a domestic business. Lastly is quantity standard. For domestic, tend to be relatively lower than international business, and for international, tend to be relatively higher than domestic business.
Select advantage is when a producer can provide a good price service in greater quantity for the same quantity at a lower cost than its competitor. A concept developed by Adam Smith, absolute advantage can be the basis for large scale from trade between producers of different goods with different absolute advantage. By specialization, division of labor and trade, producer with different absolute advantage can always gain more than producer and consumer in isolation. Absolute advantage can be contrasted with comparative advantage, which is the ability to produce goods and service at a lower opportunity cost.
There are several underlying assumptions in the absolute advantage theory, which are: there are only two countries in the world, only two goods are produced, free trade exists between two countries, no transportation costs are involved, production is under law of constant cost, and lastly, identical production functions between trading countries. Another theory is comparative advantage theory, Apa ni comparative advantage theory? Well, comparative advantage theory is an economy ability to produce a particular good or service at a lower opportunity cost than its trading partner. Jadi, teori comparative advantage ni introduce opportunity cost sebagai salah satu faktor. It's a factor for analysis in choosing between different option for production. Nak menghasilkan sesebuah negara tu, nak hasilkan yang mana satu berdasarkan opportunity cost yang ada. Jadi, comparative advantage suggests that countries will engage in trade with one another, exporting the goods that they have a relative advantage in. So, as we can see from the first table, it shows that Malaysia can produce 60 tons of cotton and 10 tons of rice. Meanwhile, China can produce 20 tons of cotton and 10 tons of rice, respectively. According to comparative advantage theory, a country should specialize in goods or services in which it has a greater comparative advantage or lower opportunity costs than other countries. To determine which countries, whether it is Malaysia or China, to specialize in cotton or rice, the opportunity cost of production must be calculated. So, how do we calculate the opportunity cost of production? If we take a look at the example of table right above, untuk cari the opportunity cost of production for cotton, ambil jumlah beras bahagikan dengan jumlah cotton. Untuk cari the opportunity cost of production for rice, ambil jumlah cotton bahagikan dengan jumlah beras. In this example, for Malaysia, to find the opportunity cost of production for cotton, ambil jumlah beras 10 tons bahagikan dengan jumlah cotton 60 tons, and you will get the answer of 0.17. Untuk cari opportunity cost for rice in Malaysia, ambil jumlah cotton 60 tons bahagikan dengan jumlah beras iaitu 10 tons, akan dapat 6 tan jawapannya. Dan begitu juga cara untuk mengiranya untuk negara China, masing-masing akan dapat jawapan 0.5 and 2 tons. So we can see from the answer written that Malaysia has the lower opportunity cost in the production of cotton, and China has the lower opportunity cost for the production of rice. Therefore, Malaysia has the comparative advantage in the production of cotton, and China has the comparative advantage in the production of rice. So the last table shows that the quantity produced after Malaysia and China specialize in rice and cotton respectively. We can see that the total world output of cotton increases after specialization, which is up to 120 tons compared to before only 80 tons. And when China is specializing in the production of rice, the total production of rice is 20 tons.
There's 5 advantages of international trade. The first one is economic growth. International trade can stimulate economic growth by providing access to larger markets, which allows business to expand and increase their production, leading to higher GDP and job creation. The second one is competitive advantage. International trade encourage competition, which drive businesses to improve their product and service, this leading to innovation and higher quality product. The third one is resource utilization. International trade enables countries to make better use of their available resource. Some nations have an abundance of certain resources, while others lack them. The trade allows for the exchange of this resource. This benefit for both parties. The fourth one is lower prices. International trade makes access to a global market often results in lower prices for consumers due to increased competition and the availability of cheaper import products. The last one is economies of scale. By producing goods in larger quantities, businesses can achieve economies of scale, which is lower production costs happen and make goods more affordable for consumers.
Disadvantage of international trade. Okay, the first one, disadvantage of international trade was exhaustion of resource. In order to present export advantage, a country may exploit her limited natural resource beyond proper limits. This may lead to exhaustion of essential material resources like iron, coal, and oil. The future generation thus stands at a disadvantage. The second one is effect on domestic industry. If no restrictions are placed on the foreign trade, it may ruin the domestic industry and cause widespread stress among the people. The next one is effect on consumption habits. Sometimes it so happens that the trade, in order to make profit, import commodities which are very harmful and injurious to the people. For instance, if opium and wine are imported, it will adversely affect the health and moral of the people. The next one, the disadvantage of international trade is import of harmful goods. Foreign trade may lead to import of harmful goods like cigarettes and drugs, which may ruin the health of the resident of the country. And the last one of disadvantage of the international trade is overspecialization. What is overspecialization? Overspecialization may be distress for a country. A substitute may appear and ruin the economic living. It will ruin the economic life of million people.